everybody, and welcome along to this edition of SportsView on LearnMedia.tv. Press the red button on the right-hand side to subscribe to our channel and tell all your friends about us. And welcome Anna Moore to this edition of SportsView.
Good night, Pat.
Welcome Joe Waters again to this edition.
Hi, Pat. How are you? Hi, Anna.
And all the way from Seattle.
Hi, Joe.
I suppose in soccer we generally we hope to cover soccer, rugby, boxing, golf, tennis, athletics. We get as much as we can. And in the soccer segment, of course, we had a marvellous win for Notts Forest, Everton, Man City, Newcastle, Aston Villa, Fulham, and Leicester. They all won over the weekend. And really, there had been a few surprises, Anna. I suppose the boxing, we'll get to the boxing later on in the show. It's marvellous to the Irish boxers. They brought home 3 gold, 2 silver, and 2 bronze, I think, if I'm right. Was it 3 gold, 2 silver, 2 bronze? Yeah. And we have a new Irish boxer, champion, IBO light heavyweight champion of the world. He won it over there in Germany over the weekend from Belfast, Paddy McCrory. Well done, Paddy, for that, you know. Doping in tennis and athletics, it's right again. Anyway, I suppose we'll never get away from that. We'll have a look at the Irish cricket team if we get a chance. But Anna, did you get a chance to see the soccer match between Forest and Liverpool?
No, I was boxing all weekend. All I heard with the lads saying was, "Oh, Liverpool are after being beaten by Notts Forest." I don't know. I mean, they came out and they played City and they were brilliant. I don't know. He didn't play Lewis and he didn't play. I don't know what's going on. There's so many injuries. I just don't know what's happening with Liverpool at the moment.
And Joe, did you get a chance to see any of the soccer?
Yeah, I did. I watched mostly soccer this weekend.
Yeah, and I think it was great. Sorry about this, Anna, but it was great. Notts Forest, of course, did the old City ground and 2 times European champions. I know one swallow will make a summer, but it was a good boost to the club, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great win for them.
Of course.
You know, they've been struggling, obviously, this year. You know, maybe this will be the thing that turns it around for Forest. But you know, Liverpool, I suppose, would have to be disappointed having, you know, beaten City and then winning against West Ham. Although, you know, he played a very young group in midfield against Forest, and he left Henderson and Milner out, and I don't know. I don't know why that was. I don't know why that was done. Why that decision was made. Maybe he thought it was a good game to get young guys some good minutes in a game that they would be expected to win. But I mean, they had their chances. They had their chances. But it you know, it was a great win for Forest, and the ex-Liverpool player scored for them.
That's right.
Yeah, so
That's right.
Yeah,
I see. Klopp will be looking as well. Wins, of course, the European Cup and wins against away to Ajax. You know, he'd probably be looking to that as well. They probably would be favourites to win.
But I do think, Pat, I do think as well that, you know, I mean, I don't know what's happening. I keep thinking you'd understand, Joe. Is there something happening in their training, on their training ground, that there's so many of them injured?
I do.
Because there doesn't seem to be any other club with as many injuries. I mean, our full team is nearly out with injuries, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know. There has to be something right.
Well, you know, I think Pat and I kind of touched on this a little bit last week when we talked. You know, I mean, I just think that finally the amount of games that they've had to play in the last couple of years and at the level they've had to play to stay in contention with City. And City is a much deeper squad. They're able to rest players more and more. I mean, City have some serious players out right now, but you don't see that, you don't feel that because they've got so many good players that they can bring in. You know, I mean, and guys, you're talking about the likes of, you know, Mahrez and Grealish that, you know, can come in at any time, and sometimes are just sitting on the bench. Liverpool do not have that. Do not have that luxury. Their players they've put a lot of miles on their legs in the last 2 or 3 years, and at a very high intensity as well. And not only in matches, but in training. That's Klopp's philosophy, is that you have to train the way that you're going to play. And they're constantly talking about high pressure, intensity. And that catches up with you after a while. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Liverpool not win anything this year.
Well, obviously, Aston Villa had a...
It wouldn't surprise me. The only thing I think that went for them, right, they lost. Most of the others drew. So it's a slightly, not as bad, we'll say, but they'll have to do something. I mean, their owners are going to have to let them buy players. I mean, City have millions and millions that they're able to be allowed constantly buy players in. And as you said, that's how they have them in depth on the bench. I mean, and you can see that even with Newcastle now. You know, Newcastle are a completely different team since they got new owners, because they're being given the money to buy the players. And I think they're about in 4th place now, Newcastle.
They are, but Newcastle really haven't, other than, Newcastle's biggest signing is actually injured right now, so he's not able to participate. But a lot of the guys playing for Newcastle, and some of them are still left over from the Steve Bruce era that Steve Bruce brought in, and they're playing great. So there's a combination there of what's going on. But you know, the City, you know, you talk about City, and you have to look at what they did. They let Raheem Sterling go to Chelsea, and they sold Gabriel Jesus to Arsenal so that they could fund the Erling Haaland deal. You know, right. So you tell me any other club in the country or in the world, for that matter, that could let two top class strikers like these two go to other rivals and not bat an eyelid about it and bring in a guy like Haaland. So it's, you know, that is the luxury of what they've been able to do for the past few years. Newcastle will eventually get to that.
Exactly.
And we don't want to dwell too long on Liverpool, but Liverpool, to me, as a club, the owners of Liverpool club are not going to invest a lot of money. This is my opinion, until they change the manager. Because I think Jurgen Klopp probably has come to the end of his tenure. And I don't mean that harshly. I mean that, you know, he's 7 or 8 years at the club, you know, and I think that they will not. They've only won 4 games in the Premiership out of 11, which is not a big record. We also had Steven Gerrard, who was sacked during the week, and he.
But I do feel that. I mean, people are saying let Klopp go, but in my opinion, I would prefer to keep him, because who will you bring in? I mean, you can see where United changed, and other teams have changed, and it's down as well, you know. So I change Klopp. I'd leave Klopp where he is, because I think he's a brilliant manager.
I think he'll stay till the end of the season anyway.
Oh, he's not going to go anywhere. I mean, to be honest, that's kind of ridiculous talk that people are coming up with, that Klopp should be going and this, that, and the other. You know, the great Bill Shankly in the 1960s, after he took Liverpool up from the second division, I think after they won the second division championship. They won, I think they won the league in 63, 64, and then 65 and 66, I think. And then in between, they won the FA Cup, right? So that 3-year period, 63, 64, 64, 65, 65 and 66, Liverpool had 3 great years, 2 league championships and an FA Cup. I think that it was definitely a 3-year period in that decade. Bill Shankly didn't win the league again till the early 70s. That was 5 or 6 years before they won the league championship again.
Yeah.
And and Bill Shankly is regarded as one of the greatest managers that was ever at Liverpool. Klopp has just won 2 cups last year, was in another cup final, finished second in the league, and we're talking about getting rid of him. I mean, that is so ludicrous. There's half the clubs in the Premier League would give their right arm to have that kind of a record.
Yeah, when you put it like that.
Exactly.
Yes, that's correct.
And to the very last, Joe, to the very last day of the season, sorry, Pat, to the very last season, they competed for everything to the very season. You know, and as you said, that was some hectic year last year. They were in everything. They were in the league up to the very end. They're playing every day, every week, every midweek, until the very last day of the season.
Yeah, and of course, then we had Man United. Man United have won 6 out of their 11 games under Ten Hag so far. And of course, you had the problem with Ronaldo during the week. Ronaldo was beckoned to come on the field, to come on as a sub in the 88th minute. The top scorer from last year was sitting in the stand, and he asked him to come on with 2 minutes to go on the team. I think that's bad management. I'm not excusing Ronaldo's behaviour. I'm saying it's bad management. Joe, what do you think?
Well, you know, I suppose you could look at it from that perspective. But, you know, you're on the bench. The manager calls you to go and play. You go and play. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who or what you've been. People think, you know, I'm reading here all these articles about this Rio Ferdinand and all these so-called, you know, expert guys. You shouldn't be doing this to Ronaldo. You know, Tommy Docherty did the same thing to George Best back in the day.
He did?
Yes, he did.
He did.
If you look it up and see, George Best showed up for a game one day, and I think Tommy Docherty told him he was going to be sub, and George walked out. He never played for United again. So to say that guys that come to the same thing happened with Bobby Charlton, the same thing happened with Nobby Stiles, same thing happened with Paddy Crerand, all the great guys that were the United team of the 60s that won leagues and the European Cup. All came to a stage. Bobby Charlton was a substitute at Crystal Palace one day, and I believe, and had to come on, was asked to come on the field, and he came on the field and played. So when you talk about Cristiano Ronaldo is above this and above that, no player is above anything. You're a player on the squad, and if the manager asks you to fulfill a role, then you do it.
I didn't mean that. I didn't mean he was entitled not to. But if you have your top scorer in your team as a sub on your team, and really,
but Pat, he was top scorer last year.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, but I mean, what's he been doing this year? What's his strike rate been this year? And a manager can only pick a team based on what he's observing in training and in games. Now fair play to Ronaldo. He comes in the next day and he trains with the under-21s, which is great. We've all been in the position where you've been in the first team or you've been sub with the first team and you had to train with the reserves the next day because you didn't get a workout. That's just the way the thing works. But Tanag had to make a statement about what was happening, and he couldn't let that go. And I
And
mean,
also,
you only have to look at the end result of the character and the team spirit the team showed in the game against Chelsea after going behind to that penalty. They played very, very well, and Casemiro scores in injury time, extra time, and gets the result from. But the team is a totally different team in terms of how they're coming back and what kind of team spirit they've got.
and also, say on a different sporting websites today, it is strongly suggested, and I would have no reason to disagree, that Ronaldo will be leaving in January. But believe it or not, there's big interest from Chelsea in signing Ronaldo as well on the website, a couple of the websites. So we don't know; it's only speculation.
Well,
Liverpool,
but you know,
Liverpool,
you talk about that. One of the reasons that Tuchel went was because Todd Boehly, the owner of Chelsea, wanted to get Ronaldo when he was for sale.
yeah.
And Tuchel said no, he didn't want him.
Oh, I see. So it goes
Yeah.
back a bit. So there's some truth. Liverpool are also on the verge of signing that young Dortmund player, Yusuke uh, Mukoko is his name. He's only 17 or 18, so they're one of the favorites. And I said Chelsea, but Aston Villa are on the verge of appointing a new manager anywhere for people who may not be interested in that. They're signing the manager of Sporting Lisbon, which is Ruben Ruben Angium is his name. So I think they have to pay a couple of million to Sporting Lisbon for it, but they're very quick to move, you know. That's Aston Villa. So I don't know. Uh, Joe, your own team, just in passing, had a credible draw with Bradford City over the weekend. I'm sure you saw that.
Yes, they did. Yeah,
Yeah.
they did really well. Bradford City are in the top six, I think. Mark Hughes is the manager there, and he's got them Bradford City going. You know, again, it's kind of down. Our away form has been brilliant, and that's what's got us to kind of where we've been. But we certainly need to start picking up some wins at home in the near future. But like I said last week, you know, John McAtee is out injured. He was their best player last year, so it's going to be kind of a breath of fresh air to get him back in December and add in a whole new dimension to what they can do. So fingers crossed.
Well, over the weekend, I was at.
Did I see Joe in mid-table, which was very good for them?
I'm sorry, Anna, what was that?
Are they mid-table at the moment, Joe?
Yeah.
Are Grimsby mid-table at the moment?
Yeah, they're
and that's
they're
brilliant because they only came up last year, like
right, right, and you know they're only 5 points off of the playoff places, so they're in. You know, they're two wins, you know, away from making it into the playoff places with results going for them and what have you. So no, it's been absolutely fantastic. You know, there was rumors. I don't know if they're still out there, but Paul Hurst, who's the manager, was a player at Rotherham, and that was always a job he was interested in. And that job became available a couple of weeks ago, and there was kind of rumors that he might be going there, but maybe he's turned that down and he's just concentrating on the project he's got going at Grimsby. So hopefully he sticks around.
Yeah. Arsenal got a draw in Southampton down the south coast. They're still top of the league. They're a solid team. Southampton themselves are a solid team. So I think it's still a good result for Arsenal, you know. And I think they'll be there or thereabouts if they'll hold their form, you know. They seem to have gelled nicely as a team, and I think they will be a threat to Man City. You know, I think they will myself. That's just my opinion. Local soccer. I was in a local soccer junior match
I'd like to see Arsenal do well. I really would like to see Arsenal do well.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
like to see Arsenal do well this season to stay up there, because sometimes they were up there and the season, and just around Christmas time then they'd start going back down again. I'd love to see them. I know I'm a Liverpool supporter, but I would love to see them, to be there and thereabouts at the season.
Yeah, and local soccer. I was at a local junior soccer match yesterday morning here in Clare, and I had a family interest in the team. My son, of course, was up front, Joe. And they'll be watching this later on, Bunratty Cratloe FC had a cracking win yesterday morning, 5-3 in a topsy-turvy game where my son Evan scored the 5th goal, and it was tough going for them. But anyway, they did well. They're top of the league. Well done, lads, to keep up the good work. But
Right.
Sports use the program. Press the red button on the right hand side to subscribe to our channel and tell all your friends about us. And we had 5 boxers in the European finals. I mean, it was unprecedented, we won 3 golds, 2 silver, and 2 bronze. You must be as proud as punch.
I am. I know these girls since they started boxing in their younger days when I'd weigh them in for championships. And I'm so proud. I'm so thrilled for Caitlin Friars from Belfast and from Shannon Sweeney from Mayo. The others will kind of be established, but these are 2 only coming on the scene, really, But I mean, they didn't just win with 7 medals. They also won. Amy Butters won Best Boxer of the Europeans, and Ireland won the Best Team at the Europeans, which for such a small country, England only won 1 medal, I think, or a silver medal, but they only won 1 medal at the Europeans. Never happens with England, We are very, very proud of them. I would have loved to have been in the airport yesterday, like I always am for them, but I had boxing in the stadium, so I couldn't go. But they are super. They're a super bunch. But it'll be interesting to see, will Amy Broadhurst, for the Olympic weight, go to 66? She's boxing 64 at the moment, but she's really only a 60-kilo boxer at Kelly Harris's place. So it's interesting to see when elite championship, will she fancy her chance against Kelly,
I was reading
for the place at 60 kilos.
Yeah, I was reading, Anna, about the dilemma that may arise in the Irish team, in that Kelly Harrington is boxing at lightweight. There's no light welter in the Olympics, so Amy, the other boxer might have to come down to lightweight. Then you'd have a dilemma. Would that be right? It's just a problem down the line there.
She's boxing 64. Amy's boxing 64. She boxed 64 out in the Europeans. Now she can up to 66, and I think she's kind of building towards that. I think she should, because if she comes down to Kelly's weight, to 60 kilos, the thing about it is you'll only have one of them going. Whereas if Kelly goes for the 66, you could come home with 2 Olympic medals at those 2 weights, and some of the other girls could as well. But they would be 2 that you would be definitely thinking could qualify for the Olympics. So it's going to be interesting to see when you see what happens with our elites. It's depleted over the years, because our elite champions, like those girls out there and boys, they will enter our championships, but then they'll withdraw. So you really haven't got the high performance boxers boxing our championships, which is very unfair, because if you're going to represent your country at something, you should have to win your title here in Ireland first. So I think there's a stipulation you have to enter at what it is, you must enter the championships. But I think they're going to put stipulation in, you must enter, but you must also compete to be considered for selection. And I think that would be very good, because you go back to when you go back to when the lads won their, they say, Katie, any of them going back, go back 10 years, every child in boxing knew who the elite boxer is. You ask the kids today, who are the elite champions? They don't know. They don't know.
No, and
Which is very sad, because years ago you'd have internationals in the stadium with these boxers. We don't have that anymore. And that again is very sad.
yes, it is. And anyway, we had 154 boxers competing in the European Championships, just the ladies' championships, from 30 countries, and we came home with 5 medals, 3 golds, 2 silver, 2 bronze. We also had Paddy McRory, who is our new IBO light heavyweight champion of the world. He won it over in Germany over the weekend. I saw the fight myself. He's a strong lad, and well, I'm afraid he was way too strong for his opponent, German opponent. So fair play, Paddy. It's never too late. He kept plugging away. I think he's 36 years of age, but he looked well. He looked well and long. And the best of luck, Paddy, in the future, if you're listening or if you see this later on. Anyway, another thing that happened over the weekend, Joe and Anna, was the group stages of for the ladies soccer or World Cup, ladies World Cup in soccer were drawn. We were drawn in Group B, Ireland. They're drawn against Australia, Nigeria, and Canada, and England, our erstwhile opponents. If we got through, actually, we'd be meeting them down the line. And I think in the quarters, I was trying to look at it. England were drawn with Denmark, China, and a playoff winner, which would probably be Portugal. So you could say England, Portugal, Denmark, and China in that group. Ireland will have an outside chance of going through from that group.
Ireland's group seems good. Yeah.
Well, Canada is going to be a real tough one for them.
Yeah.
That's Canada have a real good women's team.
They have.
Getting the home nation in your group in any tournament is always a tough one.
It is. But
The good thing maybe is that they get them in the first game.
Yeah.
And the first game becomes hugely important, and maybe all the euphoria and everything that was created from the win in Glasgow makes it, still part of it, and they bring that to the first game and they get a positive result out of that. Then I think that gives them a great start to it. But they're going to need to get off to a flyer. Have they got Australia in the first game?
They have Australia in the first game. All their games are in Australia,
Yeah. So I think that's going to be a real critical game for them to get a result in, to give them a good opportunity to advance.
Yeah. And the opening ceremony for that will be held in New Zealand, because it's hosted by New Zealand and Australia. So the opening ceremony is in New Zealand. That's next June. Anyway, we have the ladies World Cup in rugby is still going on. The 3 strong teams, which are professional teams, really, had good wins, which was France. They beat Fiji 44-0, and England beat South Africa 75-0, and New Zealand won their match against Scotland 57-0. So Canada in rugby, ladies rugby, they beat the USA 29-14. For my sins, I was watching the highlights of that on YouTube. That is okay, but anyway, it's not getting. It's disappointing, lads, in a way. I know we were disparaging about women. I was myself. But it's disappointing. It's the World Cup of maybe it's because we haven't a team in it, but there's no coverage at all of it on our side of the pond, Joe. What about over there where you are, Joe?
I haven't seen anything about it, but if the US are playing in it, which I expect they would be, there will be some. there will be some coverage of those games, of the US games. But what is it? Paramount and what's the other one? Oh God, I can't think of it. Peacock.
Yeah.
They do a lot with other sports. Peacock does a lot of rugby on a Saturday. They have a lot of games from time to time. So there'll be some coverage of it, I'm sure, over here. But I haven't seen anything when I've been trolling through the channels to see what's going on.
Yeah, and Leinster beat Munster in the local derby in the United Rugby Championship, and Connacht beat Scarlets 36-14. So Munster lost again. They're not going very well. I saw some of the match. I saw most of the match actually, and they're poor really. So I mean, obviously, they need players, they need finance, they need an injection of players. You know, I don't know. You didn't see any rugby, I know, over the weekend.
No, I watched though when we go walking every day through UL, the Munster team are training out there, and they look very, very young, you know. And at the moment, you wouldn't know very many of them, Pat.
No,
You know.
no.
You know, I read an article by Tony Ward in the Irish Independent this morning, which he's a guy that I take a lot of interest in with rugby. I think that he's very good, and I know him. But his opinion on this is that it was a good performance for Munster because the team was so young, and because he thinks that this is the way forward for Munster, is to play our younger players with some of the experienced ones that we still have, but to start from the ground up and let the new generation of players start working their way into it, and not be expecting miracles overnight. But it's going to be like Leinster, where originally with Munster back in the early 2000s, when Leinster, no matter what they did, couldn't beat Munster, and then all of a sudden, with Leinster, with the whole organisation and the advantage of the schools and the academy that they were able to bring into place, and the amount of players that they were able to bring through, eventually won through and took over. And we have to really do the same thing. That has not been part of the plan for the last few years, building from the ground up. It has been more kind of, I think, guns for hire, bringing them in. Yeah. And some of it was bad luck. You know, when you choose between two very good foreign players, and the one that you choose gets injured, and the other guy ends up flying for I think Leinster, then it's just, you know, that's just a look at a draw. But you have to start from somewhere, and giving youth a chance, especially like you're talking, Pat. You know, Munster sound like they've been in financial difficulties for a while now, and they're not going to buy their way out of it, I don't think. So sometimes you just have to let the young guys have a go.
I think they made, without making any announcements, my reading between the lines is they've decided to try and concentrate on developing local talent. I know it's painful for supporters and the rugby public alike, but I think they should persevere with that, because it'll have long-term effects for themselves and for the Irish team as well, and a pathway for the club scene, which has been pretty much neglected for a while now in Ireland. That's the club rugby, like, you know, the Lansdownes and the Garryones and the Cork Constitution and Highfield and all these traditional teams, Young Munster, of course. So those teams.
Don't forget Garryones, Pat.
Garryones, yeah. Oh,
yeah, can't forget that.
Rory McIlroy has gone #1 in the world. He won the CJ Cup over there in America over the weekend at -17. Shane Lowry finished at -6, and Power finished on even par. So my favourite lady golfer, Lydia Ko, I've often spoken about her on the programme. She won the BMW, Lydia Ko, -21, 68, 68, 66, 65. Great to see that. Simona Halep is in trouble, Joe, in tennis. She failed the drugs test. Her A sample tested positive. She got her B sample to be tested, and it tested positive as well. And surprise, surprise, as most people do when they get caught. I'm not saying she's guilty or anything. I'm saying she's surprised that both samples were positive. I know I'm laughing. They all make the same statement. I have never taken drugs. I never would take drugs intentionally. I don't know how this happened, but there you go. It happened, and
but I mean, some of the excuses are so ludicrous that you just wonder who comes up with the excuses. I saw one the other day where somebody said they got this, whatever it was, from Amazon and didn't know that the substance was in there. But again, with all the talk and the stuff about drugs, drug abuse in sports, and that, doping and what have you, would you not take that and ask? It's a simple question. This is what I got from Amazon or whatever it is. Is there anything in this that I should not be taking?
yeah.
I mean, ask beforehand. It's. I mean, they're all know there's mega bucks spent on this thing, so it should be. They should all know better than that now. It's not like, oh, I used my brother's toothbrush or something like that. It's so ludicrous at times. I don't know.
You're right, Joe, and we have a picture there of Simona Halep, for people who may not know who she was, Romanian. She's won 2 Grand Slams, French Open and Wimbledon, but it's just endemic. Also, then, Joe, we have a huge scandal in Kenya. The 16th Kenyan athlete to be banned so far. I'm going to put up 2 pictures of them there. They're the 2 runners that were the latest of the doping scandal. They're the #1 doping country now, according to WADA and all that. And it's a shame because they produced some cracking athletes down through the years, but I don't know what's gone wrong with the system there, because they had that wonderful Rhodesia in 2012 Olympics in London. He was a cracking runner. I remember him well. And really, I don't know what can be done. I think this idea of 2 and 3 year bans is not working. It's a lifetime ban from the sport if you're caught. In my opinion, that seems to be the only one. But then again, except there's there are exceptions. Obviously, I wouldn't be that harsh on people if there was something in the medication, for instance. Well, that would be taken into consideration. But I think people who have been banned and come back from doping and back again, I think really it doesn't say much about the respect people have for, we call it, clean athletes, And our own Kieran McGeehan there not so long in the European Championship showed what can be done with clean training and a clean athlete. And McColgan from Scotland as well, recently, in athletics we're talking about now. So, I mean, it is, I don't know what the long-term thing, Joe, is about it. Should they decide to make all these things legal and the most doped athlete will win?
Well, I mean, but you're talking there. So just to go to the Kenyans, I mean, how do we know that this hadn't been happening before?
Well, that's true.
I mean, so because they've been the top, especially distance running, for a number of years, going way back. So it's, how do we know that stuff wasn't happening back then? Were there coaches that were going over there from countries like East Germany and the USSR back in the day and doing stuff like that? I mean, who knows? I mean, and maybe just now these people are getting caught, and it's I mean, the interesting thing I find out is that in athletics, no person is actually guilty. They're not accused of being guilty. They failed something, and there's always a reason for it. It's like you spoke a moment ago about somebody's medication. If I'm a top class athlete and I know that there are going to be tests and what have you, if I'm on medication for something, I'm going to be contacting the appropriate people, the medical people that are in charge of whether it's with Ireland or wherever, and say, hey, this is my medication. Is there anything in this that's going to be potentially hurtful to me for all the work that I'm putting in down the road?
I
And
know.
that's the thing with it. I mean, I go to it, and our boxers, you just talked about them. I read about one of the girls that's up at 6 o'clock in the morning. She's either in a gym session or she's running. She comes home, gets showered, goes to work. In the evening, she's back in the gym again. So tell me that these people that are paying the price to reach the very top, and when they get there, they're beaten by somebody that's chosen a shortcut by
That's right.
doping.
We're
And
talking about
that's the thing. That's the thing that bothers me in all of this. Nobody ever brings up the case of the people that are trying to do it legally, and they're the ones that we should be defending the most, not the ones that have tried to take a shortcut with it and tried to get around the system. It should be the ones that are doing it properly that are rewarded, and that's my problem with doping.
We're talking about the Kenyan athletes that are being disqualified, suspended pending investigation. There's 16 of them in total now. The recent winner of the Boston Marathon, he's up there on our screen now. His name is on there? Kipyogio. He's one of them, and another Canadian, right? So really, it's sad in a way to see that happening, but it's a continuous problem that people have. It's a continuous problem that people have.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, how do they think they're going to get away with it? I mean, I know our girls, and I know I've done it myself with the girls. Get to a semi-final of a World European Championship, you have to go straight into anti-doping. They're waiting for you. You can't move, and I've had to go in with them to the anti-doping, and they have to do a test when it comes to semi-final stages of any big tournament like that. So I mean, how do they expect going to get away with it? They have to know they're going to be caught. So take the chance.
And then that becomes their issue if they're going to take a chance on something like that. If they're going to take a chance and say, "Well, I'm not going to get caught," then they deserve everything they get.
Yeah.
To me, and that.
But they're not just cheating themselves. I mean,
right. They're Sorry, Anna.
yeah.
Go on.
And if they do this, like they have to themselves that they're not winning honestly. So why would you want to not win? If you're not good enough, then walk away. But I mean, to me, how can you get glory out of winning if you're taking drugs?
That's very true. That's very true. And it's a sad situation. I think there has to be more. There has to be more of a hard line taken. Wonderful news over the week, lads. I know you catch up. Our T20 World T20 cricket team. They beat West Indies and they beat Scotland to qualify for the final 12. I know they were beaten by Sri Lanka yesterday, but they're meeting England on Wednesday in the T12, and they made the top 12, final top 12. So it's a fantastic achievement for the cricket team at the World Cup. So there you are. We look forward to being. Of course, they beat England. The last time they qualified, they did beat England in that one-day T20 World Cup. So that's something. That's on Wednesday. I don't know what time. I forgot to look up the times now, but if people are interested, they can look it up anywhere. And getting back to Anna, I have a lovely photograph here, lads, for our viewers. Now, there we go. There's the Golden Girls of Irish boxing, Anna. The Golden Girls of Irish boxing. Kelly, of course, Kelly, Aoife, and Amy. Isn't it Kelly, Aoife, and Amy? Is it? Yeah, yeah. And you met that man, that coach, Anna, didn't you? Many times, I'm sure. Of the Irish
He's a
boxing
friend
team.
of mine.
Go away.
Yeah, he's a
Tell us
friend of
more.
mine, Joe.
Oh,
He's a
tell us
friend of
more.
mine,
We want to
Zar.
know more.
Zar's a friend of mine. He came here so many years ago now that he's more Irish than some people that live in Ireland. His wife,
Yes.
and they live in Bray, known as his wife's name. They live in Bray, and his children went to school and university here. And actually, his nephew won the under-18 championship there about 2 months ago. His nephew won, but he can't go to the under-18 Worlds because he doesn't have an Irish passport. You have to have an Irish passport to represent your country in the championships.
Yes.
So he hasn't got an Irish passport, so he can't represent us.
He worked under Billy Walsh, didn't he?
He worked with Billy Walsh. At the time, I would think that Zar would have been the more experienced. He's done a degree in boxing. He's a master's degree in boxing in Georgia. That's where he comes from, Georgia. And I said, Zar to me would have been when Billy was there, and no one would ever against Billy. I had great time with Billy was, but to me, the force behind the Irish team, even now, is Zar Anthony. He's the one. He's just so clever, and he can watch something and he'll video everything and he'll watch your next opponent and he'll know exactly how you can win that contest. If he's got the talent, and he's got the talent at the moment.
Now, as we said last,
we hope in January the qualifiers will start for the Olympics start in January. So we'll be hoping to qualify a good few this time.
I think so. I think it's very positive, and it has always been our top sport in the Olympics. Anyway, boxing going way back when to the days of
well, I mean, it looks at the moment like we're in these, but it doesn't look as if they have boxing gone out of the 2028 Olympics. We're not in there at all, and unless our world body gets their act together and does their governance and what the IOC want, boxing will not be in the 2028 Olympics, which will be very sad because it's one of the most popular sports in the Olympics, and for Ireland, the most successful sport in the Olympics. You know.
So Anna, why would they be kicking boxing out of it?
They're not happy. They're not happy with the governance. They're not happy with those that are run. It all stems back to Rio, Joe. It all stems back to Rio when we say Mike Conlon came out and said they were all cheating bastards, whatever he said, excuse the language. But he was right. There was deals done, and we had about five-star officials. They were all stepped down. There was 26 stepped down after the Rio Olympics on the Rio for taking because Mike Conlon never lost their fights when they got the bad decisions, and I'll say, and my own lads told me because I was in Rio and we hadn't gone the night before because we had no boxers on, and I believe there was not a Ukrainian, Uzbekistan or had well beaten the Russian, but the Russian got the decision, and Zar Anthony was told himself 2 days before we boxed, Mike Conlon boxed, that the Russian was going to get it.
I've never heard of that happen.
So this is what this is what the IOC wants stamped out of boxing, the corruption. And now the corruption isn't as bad as what it was, but the small little bit's still there. So they want all this looked into, the finance, the whole lot looked into before they'll agree to let us under our own banner. because again, for Paris 24, it's the IOC. We will be under that banner. We will not be under the Olympic, our world body.
But Anna, I've been watching.
It's kind of, there's an alliance there now. They tried the Russian. Our president of the world body is a Russian, and with things that are going on and everything now, they're not happy about it. The IOC aren't happy with the running of our body in boxing. It's very sad because a man from Holland went against him, and we thought that this man over what's going on. If you want the Olympics, you have to go with what the IOC want. And the IOC, I don't think, want the president that we have. We got rid of the president before that, who was a Russian again, but I really don't know where we're going to go with this, because Russia would have the majority of the countries at the Eastern Bloc would all go for the Russians, you know. So I really don't know what's going on. But at the moment, they haven't us in for the 2028 Olympics.
Well, Joe,
and it all stems back, as I said, to Rio.
Yeah.
You might have missed it, Joe, the Michael Conlan fight in Rio that time. I remember when Jim McCourt, I think in the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City,
right,
when Jim McCourt was boxing. I remember that far back from my age. But this was the greatest single robbery of a decision ever in the history of boxing in the Olympics, when that Russian was given the fight against Michael Conlan. If you tied Michael Conlan one of his hands behind his back.
Yeah, I remember reading that now.
Yeah, he still would have won that fight. It was so shocking. And the worst of it all, Anna, I don't have to tell you, the worst of it all is they did not reverse the decision. Nobody saw fit to do so. That to me was shameful.
They did an inquiry into, and they did say about the corruption, did say that, and I feel that if they admitted to all of that, that the likes of Mike Conlan should have got his medal. After the first round, Paddy Barnes was down below, and I was up, we said the first flight, and he looked up to me, and I told him we were down because I was getting it from Ireland. We weren't getting the scores at the arena. I was getting them back from Ireland, where they were coming up on the screen, and they couldn't believe it. And Eddie Bulger and the lads looked back, and I just said no. Mike went out the second round. He took the Russian apart. He took him apart. He won that round. He done the very same in the last round, and they didn't give him the last round. I remember Mr. Wu went up. That would have been the president at the time. He was presenting the medals to the Russian who won that. I think he won the bronze medal. And he didn't. Mr. Wu would always put the medal on them and shake their hands. He never shook the hands of the Russian. And the Russian couldn't take part in the semi-final, Joe, because Mike Conlan had done so much damage to him.
Yeah,
really?
It was a disgrace. Katie Taylor was the same. Katie Taylor. It wasn't as blatant as Mike Conlan, but she never lost to the Finnish girl. She never lost to her.
Yeah.
So Anna,
that's the way it was.
We look forward, Joe, and is trying to organise. We look forward to having in the next couple of weeks Kelly Harrington on for a spot with us on the show to talk about her fantastic achievement, and indeed, and no mean help to Anna here with us, and we're glad to have you, Anna. But for this edition, lads, of SportsView, until we meet again next Monday, Le Cool of Day, from Pat, Anna, and Joe. Good night, lads, and take care. And happy sport.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Pat.
Have a good week.
Take care.
Good night, Joe. Good night, Pat. Have a good week, everybody.